We've been joined by the former defence correspondent Geoff Meade and, of course, Francis Tusa. Geoff, what do you think? The HMS Ark Royal decision must have been a bit of a blow.
Yes, I mean, it was expected in the sense that she was going out of service in 3 to 4 years anyway, so bringing that forward isn't that radical and will not come as a great surprise or shock to those serving aboard her or their families. I think for the Navy, this whole review is something of a Pyrrhic victory. I mean, they've got the carriers. They argued long and hard for them, but the argument might have been won by some clever legal contract writing by the carrier builders' lawyers rather than the admirals.
And some lobbying by Gordon Brown at the 11th hour.
Very much so, of course. But I suspect the cost of those carriers to the Royal Navy may prove to be too high. I mean, they're losing a lot of their escort ships, probably down to 19. All right, they're getting the 7 Astute-class submarines, but effectively they'll only have 1 carrier. The argument always for 2 carriers, well, was, you know, that gives you a constant, you know, at-sea operational capability. If you only have 1, what do you do when she's in for refit, when she's in for training? So it's kind of neither one thing nor the other. The Navy have got will have a carrier, but they won't have the 2 at-sea carriers, which they always argued for to do their job effectively.
Francis, what do you make about this decision to have 2 carriers, which actually won't have a strike capability for 10 years?
I can understand why people are saying, and this was raised by the Shadow Defence Secretary, saying, I thought the point of an aircraft carrier is it carries aircraft. Now, what people come back with is there aren't just fixed-wing aircraft, you have rotary wing helicopters, you have UAVs and so forth, and in the interim, before we get the new Joint Strike Fighter, it can carry those and be very useful and so forth, and it's absolutely true. However, at the end of the day, you could still carry those type of assets off other ships. You don't necessarily need a 65,000-ton aircraft carrier to do it. So, yes, the whole staging of it, I'd agree with Geoff that this has been, I think the Royal Navy has given up a hell of a lot to get the carriers in, and there are going to be these bit of holes here and there. However, again, slightly disagree. They're keeping 19 escorts when one of the options was to go down to 12.
So, not so bad after all. What do you think about, I mean, until the last minute we were hearing that Tornadoes were going to go, and actually it's the Harriers. What do you think of that decision? I
think you can understand that. What strikes me as odd is that when you remember the argument about Joint Strike Fighter a couple of years ago, and the Americans saying they wouldn't release the sovereignty of the software to allow the British to adapt them for particular operations. Why can't these carriers, we then ask, be adapted to carry conventional aircraft? Impossible, they said, absolutely impossible. So, you know, that strangely has been done. Interestingly, it's costing £750 million, which is just about what will be saved by putting Trident on hold for 5 years. But the Tornadoes versus the Harriers, I mean, you know, a Harrier, very capable ground attack aircraft. It's scant reward for the work it did in Helmand for 4 years, but ultimately I think the Tornado is a more capable aircraft. It represents, it's got a longer shelf life when you think the Harriers what came in early 80s, so, you know, although they've been updated, they're still pretty long in the tooth.